Day 4 of the 100 Days, 100 Books Challenge marks the beginning of a life-changing journey that will empower you to grow and transform in various aspects of your life. This includes your mindset, finances, discipline, career, relationships, startups, psychology, productivity, communication skills, and marketing. Thinking, Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. Intuition or deliberation, where you can and can't trust your brain. Thinking, Fast and Slow depicts a psychological drama within our minds, featuring two main characters, System 1, the impulsive and automatic thinker, and System 2, the thoughtful and deliberate one. These systems constantly interact, shaping our thoughts, judgments, decisions, and actions. System 1 operates intuitively and swiftly, often without conscious control, reflecting our evolutionary heritage of rapid reactions for survival. An example of System 1 at work is our immediate attention shift toward a sudden loud noise. On the other hand, System 2 is associated with conscious activities like decision-making, reasoning, and focused attention. It allows us to deliberately search for a specific person in a crowded place, filtering out distractions and focusing our attention until we achieve our goal. The dynamic between these two systems profoundly influences our behavior, as we'll explore further in this discussion. Number 1. The impact of mental laziness, how laziness affects our thinking and intelligence. To illustrate the functioning of the two cognitive systems, consider the renowned bat and ball problem. You're presented with the scenario: a bat and a ball together cost $1.10. The bat is priced at $1 more than the ball. What's the cost of the ball? Most likely, your initial instinctive response was $0.10, courtesy of the quick and instinctive workings of System 1. However, this answer is incorrect. Take a moment to reassess and calculate. Upon reflection, you may recognize the error. The accurate answer is $0.05. What occurred here was that your impulsive System 1 leaped into action, offering a rapid but inaccurate response based on intuition. Yet, it acted hastily. Normally, when faced with a perplexing situation, System 1 delegates the task to System 2 for deeper analysis. However, in the case of the bat and ball problem, System 1 is deceived. It perceives the problem as simpler than it actually is, and mistakenly believes it can resolve it independently. The crux of the issue highlighted by the bat and ball problem is our inherent mental lethargy. When employing our cognitive faculties, we often opt for the path of least resistance, as dictated by the law of least effort. Since consulting System 2 would demand more mental energy, our mind tends to eschew this route, presuming that System 1 alone will suffice. This inclination towards laziness is regrettable, as engaging System 2 is pivotal for fostering intelligence. Studies indicate that practicing System 2 tasks, such as concentration and self-discipline, correlates with elevated intelligence levels. The bat and ball problem serves as a prime example, demonstrating how our minds could have avoided a common error by engaging System 2 to verify the answer. By succumbing to laziness and neglecting to utilize System 2, our cognitive potential remains underutilized, hampering the full extent of our intelligence. Number 2. Automatic responses, how external cues shape our thoughts and actions. Consider the word fragment, SO_P. Initially, it likely doesn't evoke any specific thought. However, if you first encounter the word eat, then revisit SO_P, you're more inclined to complete it as soup. This phenomenon is termed priming. Priming occurs when exposure to a word, concept, or event triggers the retrieval of related words and concepts. For instance, if presented with shower instead of eat, you'd likely complete the letters as soap. This process of priming extends beyond influencing our thoughts. It also impacts our actions. Remarkably, priming can even affect physical behavior. In a study, participants primed with words associated with aging, such as Florida and wrinkle, unconsciously slowed their walking pace. The remarkable aspect of priming is its unconscious nature. We engage in it without awareness. Priming challenges the notion of conscious control over our actions, judgments, and choices. Instead, we are continually influenced by social and cultural cues. Research by Kathleen Vohs illustrates how the concept of money primes individualistic behavior. Exposure to money-related stimuli, such as images of currency, leads individuals to act more independently and resist reliance on others. This suggests that pervasive exposure to monetary cues in society may steer behavior away from altruism. Priming, alongside other societal factors, shapes individual thoughts, influencing choices, judgments, and behavior. These individual actions, in turn, contribute to the broader cultural landscape, significantly impacting the society in which we live. Number 3. Quick assessments: how the mind forms rapid opinions with limited information. Picture this scenario: you meet someone named Ben at a social gathering and find him engaging in conversation. Later, when asked for charity recommendations, you immediately think of Ben, solely based on his conversational ease. In essence, you liked one aspect of Ben's character and extrapolated that you would like everything else about him. Often, we form opinions of individuals even when our knowledge about them is minimal. Our mind's inclination to oversimplify matters in the absence of adequate information often results in judgmental errors. This phenomenon is known as exaggerated emotional coherence, or the halo effect. Your positive impression of Ben's approachability leads you to metaphorically place a halo over him, despite having scant information about him. However, our minds resort to shortcuts beyond just the halo effect when making judgments. Confirmation bias is another cognitive shortcut, where individuals tend to favor information that aligns with their pre-existing beliefs and readily accept suggested information. This tendency becomes evident when presented with a question like, "Is James friendly?" Studies indicate that, given this question in isolation, individuals are highly likely to perceive James as friendly, as the mind automatically affirms the suggested notion. Both the halo effect and confirmation bias stem from our mind's eagerness to swiftly form judgments. However, this haste often leads to errors due to insufficient data for accurate assessments. Our minds rely on false cues and oversimplifications to bridge the gaps in information, potentially leading to erroneous conclusions. Similar to priming, these cognitive phenomena occur without conscious awareness and significantly influence our decisions, judgments, and actions. Number 4. Shortcut strategies: how the mind speedily makes decisions. Frequently, we encounter situations requiring swift judgment. To facilitate this, our minds have evolved shortcuts to swiftly process our surroundings. These shortcuts are known as heuristics. While often beneficial, our minds have a tendency to rely on these heuristics excessively. Misapplication of these shortcuts can lead to errors. To grasp the nature of heuristics and their potential pitfalls, let's delve into two prevalent types: the substitution heuristic and the availability heuristic. The substitution heuristic involves answering a simpler question than the one initially posed. Consider this scenario. A woman is running for sheriff. How effective will she be in office? Instead of addressing the original query, we substitute it with a simpler one. Does this woman fit our mental image of a competent sheriff consequently? Rather than delving into the candidate's qualifications and policies, we base our judgment on whether she aligns with our preconceived notions. This may lead to dismissing a highly qualified candidate simply because she doesn't match our stereotype of a sheriff. Additionally, the availability heuristic leads to overestimating the likelihood of events frequently heard or easily recalled. For instance, although strokes cause more fatalities than accidents, a study revealed that 80% of respondents considered accidental deaths more probable. This discrepancy arises from the frequent media coverage and vividness of accidental deaths, making them more memorable. Consequently, individuals may disproportionately focus on these perceived risks, disregarding less sensational but more prevalent dangers like strokes. Number 5. Difficulty with numbers, the challenges of grasping statistics and the errors they can lead to. How can we predict the likelihood of certain events occurring? One effective method is to consider the base rate, a foundational statistical concept upon which other statistics rely. For instance, let's envision a sizable taxi company with 20% yellow cabs and 80% red cabs. This establishes the base rate for yellow cabs at 20% and for red cabs at 80%. When summoning a cab and attempting to forecast its color, keeping these base rates in mind enables fairly accurate predictions. Ideally, we should always incorporate the base rate into our predictions. Unfortunately, base rate neglect is alarmingly prevalent. One reason for disregarding the base rate is our tendency to focus on expectations rather than probabilities. For example, envision the scenario with the cabs again. After observing several red cabs pass by, one might start anticipating a yellow cab next. However, irrespective of the color of previous cabs, the probability of the next cab being red remains around 80%, a fact overlooked when fixating on expectations. Instead of recognizing the base rate, we concentrate on what we anticipate, often leading to incorrect predictions. Base rate neglect typifies a widespread error associated with grappling with statistics. Additionally, we struggle to grasp the concept of regression to the mean. This acknowledges that all situations tend toward their average state, with deviations eventually reverting to the mean. For instance, if a football striker averaging 5 goals per month scores 10 goals in September, her coach may celebrate her apparent improvement. However, if she subsequently resumes scoring around 5 goals per month, her coach might criticize her for not sustaining her performance. Yet, this criticism is unjustified as she is simply regressing to the mean. Number 6. Looking backward, why we recall events through hindsight rather than experience. Our minds don't archive experiences in a linear fashion. Instead, we possess two distinct mechanisms, termed memory selves, each capturing events differently. Firstly, there's the experiencing self, which registers our present emotional state, posing the question, how does it feel now? Secondly, we have the remembering self, which reconstructs the entirety of the event post-occurrence, inquiring, how was it on the whole? The experiencing self offers a more accurate portrayal of events as it reflects our real-time emotions. However, the remembering self, less precise due to recalling memories retrospectively, tends to dominate our recollections. Two phenomena explain this dominance of the remembering self. Firstly, duration neglect occurs, where we prioritize specific memories over the overall duration of the event. Secondly, the peak-end rule dictates that we disproportionately emphasize the conclusion and high points of an experience. An experiment exemplifies this domination of the remembering self, involving individuals' recollection of a painful colonoscopy. Participants were divided into two groups, one enduring lengthier, albeit less intense, procedures, while the other underwent shorter procedures with heightened pain toward the end. Initially, one might assume that patients enduring lengthier procedures would recall more discomfort, given the extended duration of pain. Indeed, this was their immediate experience. Yet post-procedure, those subjected to shorter but more intense discomfort at the end reported the most distress. This study vividly illustrates duration neglect, the peak-end rule, and the fallibility of our memories. Number 7. Harnessing mental focus, how shifting our mindset can significantly impact thoughts and actions. Our minds operate on varying levels of energy, contingent on the task at hand. When minimal attention is required and energy consumption is low, we experience cognitive ease. Conversely, tasks demanding heightened attention drain more energy, plunging us into cognitive strain. These fluctuations in mental energy exert profound influences on our behavior. During cognitive ease, the intuitive system 1 governs our thoughts, while the logical and energy-intensive system 2 recedes. This fosters intuitive, creative, and contented states, albeit with an increased likelihood of errors. Conversely, cognitive strain heightens our alertness, placing System 2 in control. System 2 is predisposed to scrutinize judgments more thoroughly, resulting in reduced creativity but fewer mistakes. You can consciously modulate your mental energy to align with specific tasks. For instance, when aiming for persuasive communication, promoting cognitive ease proves effective. One strategy involves exposing oneself to repetitive information. Repetition or enhanced memorability of information enhances its persuasive impact. Our minds respond positively to familiarity, inducing a state of cognitive ease. Conversely, cognitive strain aids in tasks like solving statistical problems. To induce cognitive strain, expose yourself to complex or poorly presented information, such as utilizing difficult-to-read fonts. This prompts heightened mental engagement as the mind endeavors to comprehend, bolstering perseverance and reducing the likelihood of premature abandonment. Number 8. Embracing risk: how presentation of probabilities shapes risk perception. The way information is framed profoundly impacts our judgment and problem-solving approach. Subtle adjustments to statements or questions can significantly sway our response. A compelling illustration of this phenomenon lies in how we evaluate risk. One might assume that once the probability of a risk is determined, individuals would uniformly approach it. However, this assumption is flawed. Even with meticulously calculated probabilities, altering the presentation of figures can drastically affect our perception. For instance, individuals tend to view a rare event as more probable when expressed in terms of relative frequency rather than statistical probability. In the Mr. Jones experiment, 2 groups of psychiatric professionals were asked about the safety of discharging Mr. Jones from a psychiatric facility. The first group received information stating that patients like Mr. Jones had a 10% probability of committing an act of violence, while the second group was informed that of every 100 patients similar to Mr. Jones, 10 are estimated to commit an act of violence. Surprisingly, almost twice as many respondents in the second group opposed his discharge. Another phenomenon that diverts our attention from statistically relevant information is known as denominator neglect. This occurs when vivid mental imagery outweighs plain statistics in influencing our decisions. Consider these statements. This drug protects children from disease X, but carries a 0.001% chance of permanent disfigurement, versus 1 out of 100,000 children taking this drug will be permanently disfigured. Despite their numerical equality, the latter statement evokes images of a disfigured child, exerting a greater influence and making us less inclined to administer the drug. Number 9. Human decision-making, beyond rationality. How do individuals navigate decision-making? For a considerable period, a prominent school of thought, particularly among economists, advocated for decisions based solely on rational deliberation. This viewpoint, rooted in utility theory, posits that individuals weigh rational facts when making choices, opting for the option yielding the greatest overall benefit or utility. For instance, utility theory would suggest that if someone prefers oranges over kiwis, they'd also choose a 10% chance of winning an orange over a 10% chance of winning a kiwi. At the forefront of this perspective stood the Chicago School of Economics, spearheaded by renowned scholar Milton Friedman. Utilizing utility theory, this school depicted individuals in the marketplace as hyper-rational decision-makers, labeled as econs, by economist Richard Thaler and lawyer Cass Sunstein. According to this model, econs uniformly assess goods and services based on their rational needs, valuing wealth solely on the utility it provides. Now, consider 2 individuals, John and Jenny, each with fortunes of $5 million. According to utility theory, they should both derive equal satisfaction from their wealth. However, let's introduce a complication. Their $5 million fortunes resulted from a day at the casino, with vastly different starting points. John entered with $1 million, multiplying his wealth, while Jenny entered with $9 million, dwindling down to $5 million. Do you still believe John and Jenny are equally content with their $5 million? Unlikely. Clearly, there's more to our valuation of assets than mere utility. As we'll explore further in the next section, our decisions often diverge from the rational expectations of utility theory, leading to seemingly irrational choices. Number 10. Trusting your instincts, how emotional factors shape decision-making. If utility theory falls short, what alternative exists? One such alternative is prospect theory, formulated by the author. Kahneman's prospect theory challenges utility theory by revealing that our decisions aren't always driven by rationality. Consider these scenarios in the first. You're given $1,000 and must choose between receiving a guaranteed $500 or taking a 50% chance to win another $1,000. In the second, you're given $2,000 and must decide between a certain loss of $500 or risking a 50% chance of losing $1,000. If our decisions were purely rational, we'd make the same choice in both scenarios. However, this isn't the case. In the first scenario, most opt for the sure bet, while in the second, they're more inclined to gamble. Prospect theory offers insights into this phenomenon, highlighting two reasons for our deviation from rationality, both rooted in our aversion to losses. Firstly, we assess value based on reference points. The initial amounts of $1,000 and $2,000 in the scenarios influence our willingness to gamble, as they shape how we perceive our position. Starting at $1,000 makes ending up with $1,500 feel like a win, while starting at $2,000 makes the same outcome feel like a loss. Despite its irrationality, our evaluation of value is influenced as much by our starting point as by the objective value at hand. Secondly, we're subject to the diminishing sensitivity principle, wherein our perception of value differs from its actual worth. For instance, losing $100 from $1,000 feels less severe than losing the same amount from $200. Similarly, the perceived loss when transitioning from $1,500 to $1,000 outweighs the loss from $2,000 to $1,500, despite both being equal in monetary terms. Number 11. Misleading perceptions, how mental constructs lead to overconfidence and errors. Our minds naturally seek cognitive coherence to comprehend the world, constructing comprehensive mental images to elucidate concepts. For instance, we possess distinct mental representations for various weather conditions. Envisioning a sunny, sweltering day characterizes summer weather. These mental images not only aid in understanding but also influence decision-making. When faced with choices, we refer to these images, shaping our assumptions and conclusions accordingly. For instance, when pondering attire for a summer day, we rely on our mental image of warm weather. However, a significant pitfall arises from placing excessive confidence in these mental constructs. Despite contradictory statistics or data, we often allow these images to guide us. Even if the forecast predicts cooler temperatures for summer, we may still don shorts and a t-shirt based on our mental image, resulting in discomfort outdoors. In essence, we exhibit a pronounced overconfidence in our flawed mental constructs. Yet, strategies exist to mitigate this over-reliance and enhance prediction accuracy. One approach is reference class forecasting, wherein specific historical instances are utilized for more precise forecasts instead of relying on general mental images. Reflecting on past experiences, such as recalling attire worn on previous cold summer days, can yield more accurate predictions. Additionally, establishing a long-term risk policy that delineates measures for both successful and unsuccessful forecasts can bolster accuracy. By preparing for various outcomes and heeding evidence over generalized mental constructs, one can make more informed predictions. For instance, carrying a sweater as a precautionary measure in case of unexpectedly cool weather serves as proactive planning. Final summary. Thinking, fast and slow, elucidates the existence of two distinct systems within our minds. The first operates instinctively with minimal effort, while the second engages in more deliberate thought and demands greater attention. Our thoughts and behaviors fluctuate depending on which system assumes control of our brain. Actionable advice. Reiterate the message. Repeated exposure enhances the persuasiveness of messages. This phenomenon likely stems from our evolutionary inclination to perceive repeated exposure to benign stimuli as beneficial. Do not be swayed by sensationalized rare statistical events often sensationalized in the media. While disasters and other events hold historical significance, their statistical probability is often exaggerated due to vivid media imagery. Leverage positive moods for enhanced creativity and intuition. Improved mood levels tend to relax the analytical mind, allowing the intuitive system to take precedence, thereby fostering creativity. Until next time, take care and see you soon.